Greetings, fellow citizens of Disneyland. Bricky here. It's that time again to do our designer walkthrough tour of Adventureland for summer 2021. What all has changed as Disneyland over the last 3 months has transformed closer and closer to normalcy.
Let's explore the history of this little planter on the edge of Adventureland that got scaled back due to Project Stardust, an effort to prepare the park for visitors expected with the opening of Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. When we look back in 2016, we can see that this planter was much longer, had a lot other jungle pieces around it, and we can definitely see how it's been scaled back to create a better entry point, a better walkway into Adventureland, and somehow is home to more of a Main Street style lamp. Before we step into Adventureland, let's first discover a different kind of force perspective that Disneyland often uses. Standing over on the Frontierland Bridge, we get a wider view of the Adventureland entryway, which was always designed to be the most hidden land from Walt's hub and spoke design. But while we're here, let's break down a different version of force perspective than the one that everybody always talks about over on Main Street. This is a more horizontal force perspective where we are tapering in the river here to make a narrow entryway, and then we're also using the edge of the landscaping to create a second strong horizontal line. So therefore, the creek tapers back into Adventureland. The distance between the creek and the edge of the flower and the railings, that differs as well. So we're getting this landmass that is tapering our way into the entry point of Adventureland, making it seem further away, more distant, but also using the creek in the inner and outer spoke to create that separation of visualization, but also of noise, so that once you finally get into Adventureland, you are much further away from the sights and sounds of Main Street, USA. Oh, it's bittersweet with the Dole Whip stand being back. Bitter because now it's back to being congested, but oh, so sweet because the Dole Whips are back, baby, which always does bring in a crowd, and unfortunately, placed right on this corner of Adventureland that goes against everything humans know as perfect crowd flow, where they go straight and then they have to make a hard left and then a hard right. It stops the human brain every time. But the Dole Whips are back, and that's always sweet. I'm a float guy. How about you?
Probably the biggest change to Adventureland since we were back here at the beginning of May is that the Jungle Cruise is back and being fully operational. Now, it's no secret, it is far from being one of my favorite attractions, but that being said, you cannot deny the kinetic energy of the Jungle Cruise as you can hear the boats humming all throughout Adventureland. It is the flagship attraction from 1955 on the opening day of Disneyland. This was the attraction that was themed after Walt Disney's various documentaries, which that's where he won the most of his Academy Awards. So the Jungle Cruise is a very, very historic, but also cinematic and emotional part of Adventureland. Just hearing the cruises take off, the cap gun in the distance, it has added so much more energy, positive energy, inside of Adventureland. Just going to prove an attraction doesn't have to be one of your favorites to ride to fully love and embrace what it means to Disneyland, and most importantly, to the Disneyland story.
We'll get more into how the Jungle Cruise has played a big part in bringing life back into Disneyland in just a second, but first, I always have to turn around and pay tribute to none other than Harper Goff, Walt's collaborator with the Jungle Cruise, and easily one of the most interesting characters from the backstory of Disneyland. But let's get back into looking at crowds. Back on July 24th, Disneyland's Adventureland was pushed to its edges when there was a movie premiere for the live-action Jungle Cruise, where the corner of death was once again pushed to its limits. I understand Adventureland was supposed to be hidden, but I do have to say this is probably the biggest original design flaw. It's a design flaw. It's not to say that I don't enjoy it or think that it's beautiful. Filled with so many great Adventureland props, it's creating the story of transforming into the adventure. Just think of it as that historic road that doesn't make any sense in the town that you live in. Here we see our update from back in May, where the water level was lowered as the Jungle Cruise had been drained. All of the water through Adventureland is tethered into the rest of water throughout Disneyland. There are clear water attractions such as Small World, Splash Mountain, or Pirates, where they have their own body of water. And then there is the dark water attractions, which are all connected together. The clear water attractions are isolated, but the dark water attractions are connected. So this stream in front of us, to the left, is attached to the moat that goes around Sleeping Beauty's castle, but to the right, it is tethered into the river from the Jungle Cruise, which had been drained out for the attraction's redesign, or more of an update, we'll say. But I do love all the little areas where the Jungle Cruise sneaks a peek into the rest of Adventureland, and having water flowing again through Adventureland just adds so much background sound, but also a visual kinetic energy, which emotionally makes us feel like we are someplace tropical.
It is so nice not to have to see all of this tarped up. To be able to see an attraction cruise by adds so much life into Adventureland.
All throughout Disneyland, you'll find a couple of really great spots where you can dine adjacent to one of the attractions. And sure, everybody's first pick is to actually be riding on one of the attractions. But a close second is being someplace where you can sit back and enjoy seeing the attractions float by. I think there's a certain special contact buzz that you get from seeing other people have a great time at Disneyland. And I enjoy the idea of being on the boat more than I enjoy suffering through the jokes. So just watching it and not doing it is perfect for me. Time traveling back to our last designer walkthrough tour of Adventureland, you can see how different this area is, with the Jungle Cruise all tarped off with the go-away green tarps, not allowing us to see the boats go by, to hear and see the water, which drastically affects this courtyard that's hidden away in the Tropical Hideway, making it just a hideaway lacking the tropical.
Just being able to dine adjacent to an attraction and to see the boats go by, people having fun while you're enjoying your Dole Whip, the soundtrack going on. Tropical Hideway, drastically an improvement to the Disneyland Resort, just having this proximity.
I think the reason why I'm more in love with the west entrance of the Enchanted Tiki Room than the north side that's always congested. Even though back in the day the Tahitian Terrace was more hidden away, we can see the effect today of the trees maturing, filling in this area more, and a recurring theme from the designer walkthrough tours, how Disney often adds in more garden space, creating eco barriers between the guests and the attractions. This area was spruced up and put to full test on crowd control during the Jungle Cruise premiere back on July 24th of the summer, which turned out to be a celebration of the Jungle Cruise skippers, probably the cast member category that I've bullied the most in my career. I do enjoy in Adventureland how the ground is such a collage of different textures, like Galaxy's Edge telling us there was a past before we visited. Now, us visiting back to May, we can see the go-away green tarp on the bridge, not allowing us to look into the jungle, and we also spot a citizen of Disneyland throwing their trash away. Thank you, ma'am. But as I do this wide shot, you can count that there is 1, 2, 3 entrances and exits designed into this little corner, which were all blocked off for the movie premiere, but it is so cool to see that banner across the bridge and the skippers standing up there to greet everyone. This little corner, though, is doing so many different things. It's allowing guests to come and go from attraction, guests to enter the back way for accessibility purposes into the Jungle Cruise, other guests to exit the Jungle Cruise. There is 6 different areas where human beings are coming and going inside of this corner, which we learned can also be transformed into a red carpet movie premiere. Always amazed at how well Disney understands crowd flow at their parks. Let's travel back in time and take a stroll over to the tropical imports. While I fantasize about going forward in time and spotting that Christmas tree they put on top of this observation deck, which is one of the best trees in the entire resort. Also, always a big fan of that glass elephant to the far right. As we step in back in May, we find this area completely empty. And it makes sense why it would be empty, because the Jungle Cruise was closed and this area was only being used as the queue for Indiana Jones because no one was allowed inside the tunnels. But let's recreate this little casual stroll just a few months later, when all of a sudden people are back inside of Disneyland, and so are the strollers. Oh, if I could tell you all the stories about how many times I've had to battle a stroller at Disneyland. I know I'm not the only one that's ever taken a stroller to the shin or to my calves, which is why I say whatever's left on a stroller is free. Just joking. I am impressed, though, what people will leave on a stroller at Disneyland.
This now stroller world was completely empty just 3 months ago, just showing the amount of families and folks that are back inside of Adventureland.
The main thoroughfare of Adventureland is always busy. Being the quickest path to New Orleans Square, Critter Country, and Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, citizens of Disneyland are oh so familiar with this area tightening up as one of the narrower walkways in the park. And Disneyland tried to do what they could with Project Stardust on removing some of the areas in the center of Adventureland, actually getting rid of retail space to make stroller space. But one of the spots in the park that really showed me just how few people were in Disneyland when it first reopened was that Adventureland was an easy breezy cover girl walkthrough, which made me do fancy walking to celebrate. One of the things we really have to discover on the Designer Walkthrough series over time is the transformation of the Jungle Cruise Facade. It really has shifted a lot to meet the demands of Disneyland over the years. Most noticeably, the transformation needed to be in 2 levels so that you could have guests waiting to board the boat on the ground level, but then have a secondary batch of guests upstairs waiting for their turn to go back downstairs to begin their cruise.
Don't forget, last time this attraction was being used for the queue for Indiana Jones because due to physical distancing, we couldn't keep everybody inside of that very long interior corridor. So it's back to life with people trying to ride the new and improved Jungle Cruise.
Now, I can make a strong design debate whether this is the greatest sign in the world or the worst one. It's horrible because of its scale and overall lacking any attention. But it's also very amazing because it is so small, lacks any attention, and makes Indiana Jones quietly hidden inside of the jungle, making it an adventure to discover it. A design technique that Disneyland would use again when designing Rise of the Resistance for Star Wars Galaxy's Edge. Because Disneyland is such a small footprint, it's amazing how closely everything has to be placed together. Ironically, the 2 islands inside of the Jungle Cruise are Catalina and Manhattan. And just like New York City, everything in Disneyland sits so close to the next piece of the puzzle, where this understated grand facade for Indiana Jones, easily one of the top 5 most popular attractions in the entire resort, sits hidden on the edge of the Jungle Cruise River, adding a level of discovery for guests that are floating by on the river, but also for guests that are exiting from Indiana Jones, casually looking over through the jungle, and there just happens to be a cobra. This use of space where guests are coming and going from 2 different attractions, seamed right together, demonstrates how Disneyland's borders are carefully crafted and carved out of the earth so that each element is made stronger by the companion that it shares a border with. I don't think anyone would argue that the Jungle Cruise is made weaker by being next to the exit for Indiana Jones, or that the Indiana Jones exit somehow isn't that fun walking next to the rivers of the jungle. It's one of those designed perfect symmetries and balance that makes this park so special, not to mention all of the sounds that we hear, ricocheting and echoing off of attraction to attraction. Even though Adventureland is pretty tiny on the map, its density does deliver the promise of adventure. On the southern edge, you have the Tiki Room blending into the Tropical Hideway, bleeding over to the Jungle Cruise that borders right next to Indiana Jones, that also has Tarzan's treehouse sort of implanted inside of it. It's just one thing that you love right after another, masterfully crafted together. And when you think about that, it's a happy accident that some of these pieces go back to 1955. Standing here in summer of 2021, you'd have no idea that this wasn't always the original plan. And think about this for a second. You make Indiana Jones an amazing attraction, and you just put this small, modest temple hidden behind palm trees as the facade of the attraction. Any other theme park would have made something that was so huge, crying, "Hey, look at me, this is where all the money went." Only Disneyland would hide something that is so amazing, and then repeat that with Rise of the Resistance by basically making it another hidden, massive e-ticket attraction. These balancing spots of people coming and going, floating and walking, this is why I love this park, because these moments make it feel more like a real little city than a theme park, a real little city hidden inside of a jungle.
One of my favorite spots in Adventureland is exiting Indiana Jones with the Jungle Cruise going over to the side of you. It doesn't matter if it's the middle of the day, late at night, or first thing in the morning. Just the relationship between these two attractions and how when you exit, you can be a part of both. It really does add so much adventure to Adventureland. One of the best spots in the entire park. Definitely best spot in Adventureland.
One of the subtle details that makes Adventureland feel tropical is this stream right along the edge of the Indiana Jones queue and the beginning of Tarzan's treehouse. And this stream is really doing so much more than what most people ever would stop and consider. Obviously, it's creating the sound of water, that motion that relaxes humans. It also makes us think that we're someplace in the wilderness. Obviously, you're not going to get those sounds when it was drained the last time we were here, as this water is connected to the rivers of the Jungle Cruise. But aside from the adventurous water noise, the stream is also doing something that's much more clever than that. Consider it to be stairs, stepping up the elevation from where you're standing down on the street, but up to the height of where the Fast Pass lane is inside of Indiana Jones, to also bring you up eventually to the height of the platform of Tarzan's treehouse on the other side of this brush. But from this bird's eye view, I can easily count 5 different steps of elevation that are taking place, pushing people on the walkway much further away from the attractions that really aren't that far apart. Add in all the plant life, the rock sculptures, the noise of the water. Suddenly, all these pieces of the puzzle feel distant from one another when really, they're quite close. Creating a magic trick that when you're in line for Pirates of the Caribbean, all of this stuff feels like something that you've already moved on and forgot about, even though it's just a couple of trees to your left. Even though it's already left your imagination as you feel submerged in New Orleans Square. The design of Disneyland seams where two lands meet is some of the most creative problem solving that you'll see at the entire resort. Looking from above, try to imagine that stream, the rocks, the brush not being there. Imagine how disappointing it would be to actually be able to see the base of Tarzan's tree, instead of this magical thing that just pops out above the jungle's canopy and just literally makes you feel like you are so far from Anaheim, California. A masterful transformation of scenery done in the tiniest of footprints.
Just the sound of having that water all through Adventureland does add in those tropical vibes that this land is supposed to possess. When that wasn't here, it was strange how such a small thing makes such a huge impact. I think that's a lot of what we're seeing as Disneyland has become more and more back to its normal self.
Now, if you really peer through the jungle, you can see the Jungle Cruise boat cruising along the edge of Indiana Jones' exit. With the way that the jungle foliage has grown in over the years, think about what a masterwork of landscaping and transformation this is. One of my favorite things about this series is sometimes you don't know what you got until it's gone. And looking back in May, you see a lot less life, a lot less energy inside of the jungle. And it's a combination of so many different things. The boats weren't passing by. There was less guests walking through the exit. There was go-away green tarps covering everything. Disneyland is a symphony. And when all the players show up and play their parts, it's music to the ears and to the eyes. I'm so happy that I was able to experience it in this moment of subtle disarray, because now I fully can embrace what it feels like to be in the park when it's busy, full of life, full of its sounds, and full of that energy that makes this place so contagious and worthy of unlimited visits. Here at the head of the waterfall, or the pump that helps recirculate the water to all the different destinations it needs to go, you have a lot of sound. But imagine it not being there. A much different vibe without having this movement, having this sound, having this kinetic energy rip through the land, and also setting up a sound break to where if you're walking by to get into Pirates, or you're walking around on Tarzan's treehouse, you don't really hear what guests on the other side of this waterfall are doing. But the waterfall, once again, is hidden problem solving in that it's actually a pump, recirculating water to make sure that it gets back to the destination it needs to go to, so the water system can fully irrigate and self-regulate. Not being natural bodies of water, it could go stagnant, it could go south really fast.
Pretty crazy to think that the reason why this fountain or this waterway wasn't going is because it is tethered to the Jungle Cruise. Exact same body of water. So when you drain one, looks like you drain both of them. So excited to have this little detail back.
Disneyland creates its own elevation, so the stair stepping of the creek on the outside of the path is to get the land transformed up to this level for folks to go into Indiana Jones, creating a visual hierarchy of people up on the bridge going into the Fast Pass versus the people on the lower level that are in the standby.
Disneyland definitely works best when it's layered. That kinetic energy of the Jungle Cruise next to Indiana Jones, next to the treehouse. When it's stacked like that, when everything's interwoven, to me, that's when it shines the most.
I'm going to spend an insane amount of time on the north edge of Adventureland. Did a decent deep dive that on last season's designer walkthrough tour, but I did want to re-examine the footage from back in May, once again to depict just how differently it is without all of the stickers all over the ground, these different roped barriers, just to keep the people flow coming and going in a safe manner due to the COVID-19 restrictions. So Bengal BBQ, one of the best dining spots of all of Disneyland, much easier and accessible a few months later. If you count along with me, there are 9 different planes illustrated in this building's facade. The way that each of them are recessed and protruding from one another, different shaped windows at different heights, is exactly why this feels like a small village versus one building. When we come across the street and look back out to where we just were, it tells the story of a small village that we're walking through, not just one building divided up into different slices. And if you follow along from the left to the right or the right to the left, you can notice that there is a transition of storytelling from Spanish-inspired to Aztec-inspired.
Last time many of the shops were closed, let's dive into the Adventureland Bazaar and take a quick lap.
I'm always going to make a strong argument that Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was inspired by Adventureland. The mixed textures in the building, the different decay that we can see, just all feels very much like what they replicated in Galaxy's Edge. Wow! Oh God, what's that? Look at that!
I've seen a lot of Spirit jerseys. This one might have the most amount of Spirit.
Now, once again, I'm going to make an argument of Galaxy's Edge being very much inspired by Adventureland. What's happening inside of this bazaar is almost identical to what we would see if we were walking through the stores in the Black Spire Outpost. Where up high we see relics from different lands and different cultures. Whether it be African or Polynesian, it's definitely not native Californian. Creating these little tableaus to different places, different faces, different people than us. And look at the building textures that are used. We're inside of a store that is showing us an exterior roof, weathered, thick cut wood for a door and a door frame. These are all exterior pieces that we would normally see in an outdoor bazaar, something much more foreign than our native land. And subtle details that not everybody thinks about when they're trying to figure out what souvenir to take home from Disneyland. But remind yourself of that vibe you got the last time you were in the shops at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge at Black Spire Outpost, and how all of those artifacts made you feel like you were able to peer into people that are from a universe so much different than yours, and how the building textures around them help narrate that story even further. With its draped purple and royal blue tapestries hanging down from the ceiling so you don't see HVAC system and the lighting, does set the tone that this is a store inside of Adventureland. And just for good measure, if you need to step in here and make a wish, fully equipped with a magic lamp, just in case going to Disneyland for the day with people you love isn't enough for your little heart and you feel like you need just a little bit more magic. Be honest with me. Did you know that the magic lamp was there? Did you know that the Adventureland Bazaar had so much storytelling inside of it to where when you walk into this shop, much like a patio, you feel like you're walking into all kinds of different shops. Lots of little different stalls from different merchants from all around the world, bringing in their items, their goods, their treasures for bargain, for trade, for sale. Designing the bazaar to be just that, a bunch of little shops inside of a shop. And just for good measure, maybe something else that you've never taken the time to fully appreciate, a Ganesh stamping pennies. And to be honest with you, I don't know if this is actually a Ganesh or just a really rich elephant that loves to take your coins and stamp them into something else. There's more story in here and more culture than what I've come to understand. But somewhere, an artist, an Imagineer, thought it was important to go in here and backtrack how to group all these items together so that when we come in here, we feel transformed away from Anaheim, away from California, away from our problems, and that we are transported into Adventureland traders and finding adventure wherever we look. and semi-affordable theme park merchandise.
Never forget the number one rule at Disneyland, always look up. That's where the story was put for you to see.
So humble from its outside exterior, but think about all of the adventure we just found inside of that one little shop right on the corner of Adventureland that most people never see because they're so busy trying to navigate the turn of death. A pretty special corner inside of Disneyland that most people don't get to see because of bad crowd flow. Friends, that's pretty much going to do it for our Adventureland Summer 2021 adventure for our designer walkthrough tour. I hope you're enjoying this series. I'm going to start doing something new, going from Disneyland one week to DCA the next week, bouncing back and forth, but doing one of these once a week because this is the part of the park that I absolutely love. Its construction, its development, and its rich history of constantly evolving, trying to find something that's a little bit closer to Disneyland perfection. I hope you enjoy this series and it helps you better enjoy the park the next time you're able to go out and do a rip around Disneyland or DCA.
Friends, from the edge of one of the best subtle details of all of Adventureland, I hope you enjoyed this season's Adventureland Designer Walkthrough Tour. I hope you enjoyed looking at all the things that have changed in 3 months. And when we come back next time, holidays will have found their way into Adventureland, and I, for one, can't wait to discover it. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a comment below or give it a thumbs up, and consider subscribing to the channel because when I come to Disneyland, I always love to do a live stream and provide you a window into the magic when you simply don't have one for yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to Club 1313 for making today's video and all videos possible. Thank you for watching.